first of all, and just hear what everyone's name is, where they come from, and what their job is before we get down to business.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacob Mbele. I'm the Director General of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks, Jacob. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mzila Mtenjane, and I'm the CEO of the Minerals Council South Africa, which is an advocacy entity on behalf of the South African mining industry.
Thanks, Mzila. Good morning, everybody. Sanbonani, Dumelang, Khuyamora, Absheng, Da, as we say in South Africa. I'm Themba Mkhwanazi, and I am the Regional Director for Australia and Africa for Anglo American.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, fellow panelists and delegates. My name is Musa Mabuza. I'm the Chief Executive of the Council for Geoscience. The Council for Geoscience is the Geological Survey of South Africa. We are responsible for all the geoscientific knowledge for the country, both on and offshore. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Musa. Good morning to the moderator, my fellow panelists, as well as the delegates here. My name is Botlhale Siageng, and I have the pleasure of being the Director of Investment Promotion at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. So sort of my function is to ensure that we bring in as many dollars into the country. Thanks.
That's great. So nice to have you all here, and hopefully we can share the story of the South African mining scene with an audience which may or may not know a lot about South Africa already. I hope we're not going to be sort of going over stuff that everybody knows, and if we have time, we'll try and see if we can have some questions. But I'd have to say, as moderator, I won't allow any questions about sandpaper, Themba.
For those who understand cricket.
Themba, perhaps you could set the scene for us. Tell us a little bit about, as in your role as Director General of the department, to set the scene. What does the mining community look like, or does the mining industry look like in South Africa?
Okay. Themba just got yes, Jacob. Thank you, Program Director, and good morning. No problem. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, once again. I'm deeply honored and privileged, obviously, to have the opportunity to make these brief remarks this morning and set the scene for the panel discussion that's about to follow. But before I do that, let me take this moment to thank the host, His Excellency Minister of Industry and Minerals Resources here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mr. Bandar bin Ibrahim Al Kharayef, for the invitation to our Minister, Minister Mantashe, and the department to be part of this forum again this year. We were here last year. Unfortunately, the Minister, due to other commitments, could not be here, but we are here as the team from the department to honor the invitation that was directed to us. Let me also acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, the South African Ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Tate David Makgabe. We appreciate you making time. We know you have other many things that you have to deal with. So thank you for being here today. I think, as the Program Director, you have said, many of the people here may already have, obviously, or know a lot about the South African mining, but I think it's important to remind the audience about the South African mining industry. I mean, having been the focus, South Africa having been the focus of sustained large mining capitalization for over 100 years, the South Africa has actually a mature and well-developed mining sector. Our political, social, and economic landscape has been dominated by mining for many years, and the sector has been the mainstay, basically, of our economy. besides what we are mostly well known for, which is coal, gold, diamonds, and platinum group metals, we are endowed with other minerals such as chrome, vanadium, lithium, titanium, manganese, copper, rare earths, and others. My colleague, Mr. Mabuza, who's from the Council of Geoscience, will delve deep into some of the work that they're doing and some of the minerals that we have identified. We therefore invite you to come and invest in exploration and extraction of our minerals and metals, including obviously the rest of the value chain associated with mining. I know many of you would have probably picked up in various media news about some of the infrastructure challenges that we are facing. We are working hard with the private sector, including the mining sector, to address these challenges. We have, in the recent time, already made some progress. We have already made several regulatory changes to allow for greater participation by the private sector in areas of infrastructure and service provision that were in the past mainly the area of government focus. Private sector companies like mines are now able to secure energy direct from independent power producers or even develop their own power generation. And this they are able to do not to only ensure that they secure their own power, but to also address or meet their ESG and transition or emissions reduction targets. The private sector is also supporting and working with the government, specifically the Transnet, which is the rail and logistics company, to improve logistics as well as explore options to expand capacity. And again, once again, I'm sure my colleague Ndadim Zila from the Mineral Council will talk to some of the work that they're doing with the government in this regard. We are alive to the fact that we are competing for capital with other mining jurisdictions, and having the mineral endowment is not the end, the be-all and all. We are working on ensuring that our processes and specifically administrative processes are efficient and transparent. And in that regard, there are a number of initiatives that we are undertaking. We have embarked on a process to deal with a backlog of licensing applications for prospecting and mining rights. We are in the process of acquiring a cadastral system which will obviously help speed up applications, eliminate processing errors, and ensure transparency in terms of what is available, and including the mining process. We have also allocated additional funding to the Council for Geoscience for them to accelerate geomapping in order for us to increase exploration. We are also in the process of developing what we call the critical mineral strategy for South Africa, which will define, enable the development of domestic value chains and therefore local beneficiation. Let me end my remarks by going back to what I understand Program Director to be the overall objective of this forum, the Future Minerals Forum, and that is building collaboration and partnerships. Besides our endowment of future minerals in South Africa that I've already mentioned, our country boasts a high level of technical and production expertise in mining, as well as wide-ranging research and development institutions and activities. We therefore do not just export minerals and metals. We export expertise and technology. We have, over the years, exported this expertise to many parts of the world. I'm certain in your travels around the world to various mining jurisdictions, you are likely to encounter at least one South African. And I think that is something of value and collaboration and partnerships that we believe as South Africa we bring besides the minerals. We therefore look forward to collaborating and partnering at regional, continental, and super-regional level with everyone. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Jacob. And let's see if we can get back to have a little bit more discussion about the super region and where South Africa fits into that. Mosa, you're the CEO of the Geoscience Council, and Jacob gave us a hint that you were going to tell us a bit about exploration, and so let's hear what some of the initiatives that you've been managing and how they fit into the forward-looking strategy.
Thank you very much, Pete. So let me start by saying that when you look at South Africa and the fact that we've been mining for over 150 years, your first thought would be this is a matured mining industry and therefore there's no longer a future of mining. Contrary to that view, when we look at the geology, we find that we have some of the best geology in the world. In fact, I'll argue that we have second to none. Saudi is very close. We're very similar geology with Saudi, so it's fantastic. It already starts there on what we can do together. And historically, we had focused on those minerals that my Director General has alluded to, the gold, the copper, platinum, and so on. With the global challenges of climate change and our response, our required response to climate change, particularly on sustainable energy supply and new industries that are emerging, there's a whole suite of these base minerals that will be an input to support the choices that we make. That presents wonderful opportunities, of course, for the mining industry. And for us as geologists, it means we go back to the basics. We look and characterize the rocks and identify the minerals and the elements that all of us need with the choices that we make. And that is the base of the work that I do with my team. Our government has understood the value of investing in geology, and they've dedicated resources for us to do the geology, and for the past 5 years we've been ramping up the mapping exercise in our country at a scale of 1 in 50,000. That is the level at which you need information to be able to make informed choices of what lies there. The example I would make today with some of the findings that we make is the characterization of a huge rock called pegmatite in the northern Cape province of South Africa. What this rock, what we have done in essence, we've undertaken an integrated study consisting of mapping, geophysics, mineralogy, petrography, chemistry, isotope studies, as well as various mineral extraction studies. We don't ordinarily go to mineral extraction studies, but we needed to do that because we have not extracted pegmatites before in South Africa. And what are the findings that we have made in summary? The findings are that there is economically significant lithium content in these pegmatites. There are important geological controls to the mineralization of lithium in the pegmatite that we have come to understand. I will publish this study so that those who are interested in these critical minerals can then come and invest in South Africa and have a conversation with our Director Generals. We are finding that at least 90% of this lithium is recoverable using simple chemical separation. But in addition to the lithium that is there, we are finding that there is appreciable concentration of tin, tantalum, rare earth elements, thorium associated with monzonite, as well as uranium. Now, you then ask, what do you do with geology to bring the context of development? We argue that it all starts with geology, because once you have characterized the rocks and you have an appreciation of economic significance, then you can make the choices of development that you see fitting. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks, Musa. So, Mzila, this has been a bit of a government overview. You're, as the leader of the Minerals Council of South Africa, get a view of what your members are seeing from government strategy and what they're actually doing on the ground. So how does all this fit together from your point of view?
No, very, very nicely, and maybe an opportunity to share with the audience who the Minerals Council is. So you probably would have known it historically as the Chamber of Mines of South Africa, and about 5 years ago we went on a rebranding exercise, and hence we are the Minerals Council of South Africa today. And the primary function of the council is, for my purpose, is really advocacy and impact, and I place the emphasis on impact as well. Advocacy, from what Jacob and Musa have shared, in as far as working constructively with government to ensure, I think, a favorable legislative environment, as Jacob has outlined, in order to be able to pursue the kind of opportunities that Musa has spoken about. But we're also taking that further, that it's not just engaging with government for the right environment to operate in, but the result of the mining in terms of its contribution to the country, both socially and economically, is also critical. So the mining industry currently in South Africa contributes between 6 and 7% of GDP. And from a social perspective, in South Africa, it has a multiplier effect of somewhere between 8 and 10, and in some regions it may be higher than that. So that means that for every one person that we employ in the mining industry, they possibly have about 10 positive impact on 10 other people outside of that socially. So it's a very material industry, and we saw that recently with COVID, where the mining industry contributed significantly to the fiscus during a very difficult time in the economy globally and nationally. From an environment perspective as well, the industry is leading in terms of adopting leading practices. There's a conversation about the TSM towards sustainable mining, and the members of the Minerals Council are engaging in terms of adopting and adapting to those principles. Maybe to talk about something else that Jacob referred to, which is we acknowledge the challenges that we're facing as a country and particularly as an industry in as far as our electricity and logistics are concerned. I'm proud to say that as an entity, and our members are really playing a leading role in addressing these challenges, and speaking particularly on the logistics perspective. We have CEOs of our member companies in these crisis committees working very closely with government to assist and contribute towards the recovery of Transnet as a major logistics network in the country. And I'm proud to say that some of the results we're seeing already early this morning is that we're beginning to see a stabilization and an improvement. And when we look at the coal export line, that looks like it won't reach its targets that it had set, but it's certainly encouraging to see that it's moving towards that direction. And we're going to see the same in terms of the iron ore line, the manganese and ferrochrome as well. So it's encouraging to see that this constructive engagement between business and government is working and delivering results. And so it's going to provide for a platform to expand that to other areas. Government continues to play a significant role in the economy, and we believe that there's an opportunity to allow more participation of the private sector into the economy. The aim is not to take away ownership of the economy, but I think we believe as a private sector industry, government can continue to own significant portion of the economy, but from an operation and bringing in innovation and technology and efficiencies, we can certainly, the private sector has a role to play, and these are the conversations taking place, for instance, looking at possibilities and exploring possibilities of concessioning when it comes to some of the rail. And these are, practices that are already in place in terms of road logistics. I think what Musa has spoken about is the extent of diversity of South Africa's minerals sector. And with the conversation taking place today here and everywhere else around critical minerals, it's an opportunity for South Africa to build on top of that. But it's important that we fix some of the basics that we've mentioned around ensuring reliable electricity supply, the ability to be able to exit those commodities that we don't use within the country to other countries. Other enablers such as water infrastructure are going to be critical. And so the Minerals Council is really a body which ensures that we maintain that constructive relationship with government to ensure that the mining industry grows from its current base and be able to take advantage of these opportunities we're seeing coming forward through critical minerals.
Just repeat again, what was the size or contribution to the South African GDP?
It's 7% or thereabouts.
That's significant, huh?
Yeah.
So Temba, the CEO of Anglo American for South Africa, or for Africa and Australia. We've had government, we've had industry. This is where the rubber hits the road, where you are, and Anglo American, a very significant international global player. So how's it looking from your point of view on the ground and delivering? As we just heard, the industry's got to play a role. What do you see coming forward?
Thank you, Peter. I think from the context of South Africa's contribution to the super region, I think you've heard from Jacob and my fellow panelists here that clearly from a minerals perspective, there's quite a large opportunity and a contribution, but also, from obviously skills, there's also a large contribution. I think for me, and this is our experience as well, as Anglo-American, our roots are in South Africa, and we've been mining there for well over 100 years. One of the big discussions that has been taking place, at this Future Minerals Forum is this issue around responsible mining. It's this issue around code development, right, in terms of getting access to these resources, but also at the same time developing the downstream processes. And we certainly genuinely believe that South Africa has the template for how that is done from a mining perspective, and clearly an opportunity from a developing these downstream value chains. And core to that is essentially the mining code that obviously defines how we do mining and is largely obviously administered by the Department of Minerals and Energy. So what is our experience? And of course, this is obviously also for potential investors in South Africa. First and foremost, our experience is that, mining is a long-term game. You've got to invest for long-term, decades. So first and foremost, you need regulatory certainty. You have regulatory certainty in South Africa, and I would argue and say probably the best that you'll get, in the world. And I say this because we operate as Anglo-American in South America, and we have challenges. But we also operate in the OECD, Australia, as an example, first world, we also have challenges. I mean, about a year ago, we all woke up in Australia and found that the royalties had changed overnight with zero consultation. That's not the approach of the South African government. So you have regulatory certainty, even in the context of a developing world. Secondly, the mining code is designed in such a way that it really pushes for inclusive development within the communities to which we operate in, and ensuring that the communities, local government, provincial government are also beneficiaries of obviously mining per se. And again, I mean, I think that's really important. And for me, one of the biggest thrusts around the mining code is what is actually achieved in terms of transformation, and bringing a more inclusive approach. For example, the participation of women in mining is probably, arguably, in South Africa, the highest it is in the world. And that's not just women participating in mining in administrative roles. These are, hardcore mining roles. I mean, I'm always very proud going underground, way down, and meeting ladies who are running sections underground, right? Which is something that we're obviously extremely proud of. And of course, also ensuring that as well, host communities benefit from the economic, prosperity of the mining operations. So I think, in the context of critical minerals, that's certainly something that, we from a South African context can share with the wider world. The other element, of course, is a very sophisticated and a highly developed financial and banking system. And again, I would arguably say that probably one of the best in the world as well, and especially for a mining jurisdiction. And then the other one for me is clearly the one around legal recourse. I mean, we have an independent judiciary where there is legal recourse. And of course, it should be the last resort in many situations where obviously there is potential conflict. But again, you can rest assured that you have that. And then finally, for me, it's the skills, the institutions. And Jacob, said a lot around that and some of those benefits. And as I say, I mean, I think for me, this is all really important, because if we already have the template of what this inclusive development looks like, then we should then be able to feed that in terms of the aspirations of how we can make the super region effective and a win-win for all the sovereign states that participate in this super region. And of course, the other element, which obviously still needs more thought and refinement, is how do we actually develop these downstream processes. But again, in South Africa, we have a view and an idea around what the approaches needs to be in terms of the localization, particularly with some of the OEMs and their participation in that.
Well, there's a lot there. Thank you for that, Themba. Patali, let's come into perhaps what's going to be interesting for the room, and that's your area of interest, investment into South Africa, into mining projects. So what are you hearing from investors that are looking at it, at South Africa as a destination for investment?
Yeah. No, thanks, Mark. And I think firstly there's massive upside for investors looking to come into South Africa. I think a common thread throughout all the panelists is that South Africa has a very deep experience when it comes to mining. We've been mining since the 1850s, and that means that over a period of time we've been able to, I believe, create a center of excellence within South Africa. I know there's been talks about open up a center of excellence. And I think in South Africa, I think we've already done that, and I think we need to start leveraging our expertise. We've produced some of the world's best CEOs globally, and we continue to export our skills to the rest of the world. I think secondly as well, I think we have some of the world's best geology. Mr. Mabuza has touched on that as well. Largely untapped. I think we're sitting at the cusp of what I would call a second phase of our mining, where we now sort of venture into these future minerals which we have in abundance. And we have also very enabling policies which ensures both benefit for the mining companies, but also ensuring that host communities benefit as well. And there's some fantastic case studies. Timma touched on a few of them. But just to share another one, if you think about sort of the removal of the licensing cap for mining companies has meant that mining companies can now generate their own energy, which is renewable energy, which then helps them to also green the operations. So that then also helps them to, really put into effect sustainable mining as well. So I think we've created over time, over centuries, an ecosystem within South Africa, which includes enabling policies, which includes world-class geology, skills, and really host communities working together with mining companies. So I think as an investor, you can find comfort when it comes to South Africa, that you aren't dealing with a region that's new to the game. I think we've over time really learned how to be world-class when it comes to mining.
Well, that's great. Something for the panel, not directed at anyone in particular, but last night at the gala dinner, I was sitting next to a senior business person from another African country. So we're talking now about the super region, Africa as part of that. And he wasn't a big fan of the way that mining investment was coming into his country. We had a mountain before, now we've got a hole in the ground, and we've got nothing much to show for it in our country. South Africa, with its very deep mining heritage, 7% of the country's GDP being derived from it, you see the value of mining in your country. What can South Africa do for the African part of the super region and beyond Africa?
Okay. Can I
Go.
go?
Yeah.
Okay. I think from a regulatory point of view, I think Themba touched on some of the policies that we have put in place, specifically the MPRDA, which is the act that we have in place. That's an instrument that we are using to make sure that the host communities benefit. And we believe from a regulatory point of view, we can work with what I'll call local regions to help them develop these instruments and ensure that you just don't leave the hole on the ground. But it's also not just about yes, the host communities benefiting and leaving the holes, but it's also to share with them the work that we are doing and our experience around how to make sure that going forward, those who are mining have the responsibility or carry out the responsibility to rehabilitate or make good what they have left behind. I think the other thing that I believe we can share is our policies or actions around mine health and safety. I think that Themba also spoke about the number of women that were able to take underground. That did not happen by chance. It happened because we put in place certain policies, and specifically under the mine health and safety, there are guidelines that are targeted at making sure that women who go underground, from a safety point of view, from a health point of view, have all what they need to be able to operate in that harsh environment. So I believe from a regulatory point of view, there's a lot that we can offer. And I think that's why in my remarks I spoke about we support collaboration and partnership at local, continental, and super region, because we believe it starts at a local level. You know, there is a lot that can be shared. There are economies of scale that can be exploited at a local level and therefore be able to be taken to a super region level. Thank you.
Well, that's a critical question that you've asked, and I think it's it's the essence of this conversation and many other conversations in mining jurisdictions in terms of how our country is benefiting from mining, and hence when I spoke earlier, I placed the emphasis on not only advocacy but impact of mining, and this is something that's going to be central going forward. Firstly, for mining to be able to attract the kind of a capital it will need for development. If you look at the mineral endowment of the continent, you know, for sustainable mining, impact is going to be critical across different dimensions, not only from a fiscal perspective, but also from a social and environment. But I think your question also touches on what Jacob is talking about in terms of policy. Policy which is implemented in a way that's going to drive economic development. So the revenues that we generate as mining companies, that we contribute to the fiscus, need to be reinvested back into the country. Whilst as mining companies we can contribute towards local communities working with local government, I think there shouldn't be a loss of the bigger picture in terms of the role of government in terms of reinvesting those revenues, such that you don't get this unhappiness about mining not benefiting the people. There's a working together and a collaboration that is required on the basis of effective policy that enables mining to operate, to generate the returns, contribute to the fiscus, and invest back into the country. So there's a logic and a sequence to this that I think is important to be able to respond to that question and concern.
Themba?
Can I just also add on what's been said by Jacob and Mzila? I mean, I think, you know, a prime example of what mining can achieve, the city of Johannesburg is a capital city that was built on the back of mining. Another case in point for me is Brisbane. You know, Brisbane 15 years ago was a small farm town. You know, today it's a growing metropolis, Brisbane in Australia. And that too has been on the back of mining, particularly in the Bowen Basin in central Queensland. So that's what can be achieved by mining and the multiplier effect. What's key though and important in terms of the context of the super region is that when we think about obviously the pathway to a decarbonized world, we need to be very much aligned to a holistic approach and recognizing that it's not just about electrification, right? Which includes the critical minerals. And we are very much aligned with the approach and the view of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that says there's an element around electrification, but there's also an element around human development, you know, the development of the livelihoods of what we term the developing world or the global south. And then in addition to that, there's the element around food security, because as the populations in the global south, you know, grow by 2 billion by 2050, these people need to be fed, you need access to arable land. And I really think that that's also a great opportunity where if we follow that holistic approach through collaboration, through looking at the natural resources that we have, not just the metals and minerals, the sun, the water, and everything else, we can truly collaborate in developing these ecosystems that really improve the lives of the billions of people that largely reside in the global south, but also to the benefit of the ongoing livelihoods of those that live in the developed or the global north.
It seems to me that somebody like me coming from Australia, from outside the region, outside of Africa, for me to have a discussion with this senior business person he would probably think, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? But I think you guys, with your nation's deep heritage in mining, and as you said, Themba, Johannesburg owes its existence virtually to mining. I think you have a responsibility, perhaps, to be advocates for our industry and the benefits it can bring to a nation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions from the floor? I think we're getting close to our time, aren't we, Gav? What time? Yep.
Sorry, there's a mic there for you.
Thank you. DG mentioned earlier on about the theme of the forum this year, about building collaboration. And I mean, I've been listening to a lot of what South Africa has to offer. But since DG, you were here with the president in October 2002, what sort of collaboration exists now between South Africa and Saudi Arabia?
Okay, I think there's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of South African businesses, for example, that have established here in Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of there's a lot of companies from Saudi Arabia that have established in South Africa. And if I may give an example from a government point of view, our very own Council for Geoscience and MinTech are working with, obviously, the Saudi Arabian entities in terms of helping them with the geology, but MinTech as well in terms of helping them with the setup of the necessary laboratories, I mean, to do the tests that they need in terms of the minerals that they have. And on the private sector side, I met yesterday in engineering services, mining engineering services company from South Africa that was here as part of that outreach that are actually in the process of setting up an office here. And I think that talks to the point I was making earlier that I think one thing we pride ourselves with is that you cannot go to any mining jurisdiction and not encounter a South African. And I think that's something that we are proud of from a skills point of view. And there are others, just not in mining, by the way. I met someone as well yesterday who works for, a South African who works for an entity that is doing a lot of work here. But in terms of the companies here, we, for example, Aquapower. Aquapower is big, it's participating in, they've invested a huge amount of money in a concentrated solar plant in South Africa. They're participating in our renewable energy program, so there is investment going both ways in terms of Saudi Arabia and South Africa. So the collaboration that we're talking about is not only just in the mining industry, it's actually even broader. Thank you.
No, thanks, Pete. So let me start by saying what we like as geologists is that geology doesn't know political boundaries and it transcends the oceans. At some point, all of these countries were one. And so you can't study geology through the national prism. You will not understand it fully. So it is in that context that in Africa, we are already organized as the Organization of African Geological Surveys. We've created a block of geological surveys to study areas of common interests, including the purpose for which we are here, which is one of the applications of geology. 2 days ago, we had an International Geological Surveys meeting hosted by the Saudis, our counterpart in the Saudis, and we are exploring the possibilities of the creation of centers of excellence within the context of a super nation. To the extent that you cannot manage what you don't know. You can make calls on what you have not delineated and quantified. And you need to be deliberate and purposeful in delineating and quantifying the extent to which you are blessed with what you have, and then you can manage it effectively thereafter. Thank you.
No worries. Just just occurred to me with your question between the relationship between the Saudi and South African leadership. It occurred to me that Saudi is now part of the BRICS, and so we have Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi, all countries with great mining heritages and aspirations. So there's a channel for collaboration between the two countries through that forum too.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the floor? No? We're all done. Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been great to have this conversation with you, and it's really brought home to me that the leadership role that South Africa has in this region. You are the premier mining country when it comes to mining in the super region. So I'm sure you'll grab that leadership opportunity with both hands. And I hope, Patali, you're able to see plenty of investment coming from Saudi into South Africa. There's lots of people can learn by actually doing mining in South Africa and taking it back to their own countries as well. So thank you very much for enlightening us, and thank you for being part of our conversation.
Thank you.